and welcome back to the R.N.R podcast. This is R.N.R number 9?
Number 10.
Number 9, because remember last week's podcast had to be scrapped because we recorded with the bad.
True.
With the,
but technically it's number 10.
Yeah, we are number 10. Yo, why are you showing me Rose Namajunas' picture for some reason, Isaac?
It's a fight for her and Paige Van Zandt.
Oh, wait. Before we get into any of that, though, we'd like to...
We have a special
guest.
Mm-hmm.
You want to introduce yourself?
My name's Christian. I'm thinking about doing YouTube, but I don't know what exact topic I want to do. There's a lot of stuff that I'm very passionate about. I also like other stuff like animation, music. I like to make vaporwaves sometimes. I think I had a SoundCloud, but I had to delete it because my phone was taking up a lot of space. But yeah, that's why I'm
recording on your phone.
Huh?
Do you put music out? Because you said you got.
I try to make vaporwave tracks.
Oh.
I'm really into vaporwave. If you know what that is.
No, what is
that?
It's a kind of it's actually a very big thing at the moment, or at least it was in 2015. It's the first music genre to be based around the internet, and basically what it is many vaporwave artists, what they try to do, like even on the amateur level, they basically resync old like 80s or just in general any song.
This sounds like
its own.
This sounds like lo-fi.
It's lo-fi actually came from vaporwave.
Oh, wow.
What is lo-fi?
Well, lo-fi is
those rap videos you see with anime like AMVs and stuff.
Yeah, it's like they have 24/7 live streams. There's basically low fidelity sound.
Yeah, and they have
I know what that is. Yeah,
I did a podcast on it.
It's like it helps you to study too. Yeah, there's like this beautiful Asian one.
Yes, bro, this Asian
lady just like sitting there,
down, right?
You can freestyle to that joint.
Yes, bro. Okay, so that's called lo-fi?
It's called lo-fi, yeah. And they actually put it's called low fidelity sound, so they put imperfections in the sound, like little crackling, like these like hisses. It's purposely made for like chill out kind of vibe out music.
For some reason it says college music. Like,
yeah, I mean, they have different titles.
Study music.
Yes, it's college study music.
Because there's like a whole category of kind of lo-fi, I guess, music you can listen to that, and it lets you focus more, or like enhances your brain waves or alpha brain waves, whatever, all that stuff.
Oh, jeez, those clickbait titles.
It's not the same as vaporwave. Vaporwave's like kind of distinct. Like vaporwave, what it is basically like, America, like in the 80s, they had all these like commercials about like what 2000s would be like with like Back to the Future thought we would have like floating like rocket shoes or some shit like that.
Yeah. And like a lot
of like capitalists and a lot of economists and like historians were calling it the end of history. David Fukuyama, he made a book called The End of History, claiming that like once the Soviet Union would crash, it would be like the end of history and just like a bridge towards progress. And like after the Soviet Union crash, like the 2008 like collapse and everything.
Yeah.
And like basically what vaporwave is like a critique on like consumerism. Like if you look up vaporwave just right now, like on your computer, like vaporwave, like on Google Images, like you see a lot of like old commercial like imagery, and you see it like almost like with 90s editing. It's like a meme of like 30-40 years of like commercial advertising. Like it's critique on consumer culture.
Okay.
Dang, that's kind of cool. And I kind of want to do a podcast
in order to like
specifically
keep vaporwave like intact. A lot of vaporwave artists don't sell their tracks. They have you like download it for free because it's like an anti-capitalist like mode of expression.
So they don't even make money out of it.
Yeah, and there's two variations of vape. There's Fash Wave, which are made up like neo-Nazis and fascists, and then there's Labor Wave, like communist-oriented.
Damn, this sounds like the perfect like hipster music right there. That's like, yo,
not really.
Anti-man.
Yeah, because you can find all kinds of people: neo-Nazis, regular-ass people, communists.
They share the common ground of hipster. They're like, we might be racist towards each other, but we're all hipsters deep down. Let's listen to this music, man.
So, go ahead.
Basically, a lot of like the most popular one is Macintosh Plus, which is like the most vaporwave sounding name.
That has to be. That is like the most hipster name, Macintosh Plus. That's like a throwback, a real old
And
throwback.
guess what the album's called?
What is the name?
Called Floral Shop O2.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ!
And just to add more icing to the cake, it has Japanese on it, like on the other half of the title.
Oh my, nah. Actually, Japanese is kind of mainstream. I wouldn't be surprised if it was
is
like
it
German.
Macintosh plus like some kind of computer software or something? Or
It is. Macintosh Plus is the first
Yo, bro,
like
what the
Apple.
hell? Like I
Jesus
zoned out for a
Christ.
second here. What the hell? Are you guys talking about computer programs, or are you guys talking about the
Macintosh
about
is
the
Apple's
name of-
laptop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mac came from Macintosh.
Well, now that we're in a
okay.
puddle of confusion, let's transition to Kanye.
Kanye.
Bro,
Yeah, that's a good transition.
I want to
I
start
thought we
with
were
that,
going to talk
bro.
about Kanye or Mengistu, but like, yeah, I can talk about Kanye.
Which one do you guys want to hit on first?
Let's hit up Kanye first, real quick.
Yeah,
Hit up Kanye first.
bro.
What do you think about it? It's some crazy.
No, I thought it was just a promo run, bro. Just he got
you thought it was
music
some
coming
promo?
out.
Nah,
Yeah,
Kanye doesn't
no,
promo.
bro.
Give
he does.
Give
he
me
does
context,
a promo
bro.
run.
Give me the context.
So you don't know what
what's
happened?
going on. Zero. I saw some shit about it, but I don't even know if we're talking about the same thing because I
Jeez,
started.
All right.
I don't even know why we do podcasts with him, bro.
No,
I don't
he doesn't
even
know,
bro.
He's just like more us teaching
For
Seyoum
real, like
everything.
this podcast is for him to cut up what's going
No
on
wonder
in
he
the
likes
world,
it.
bro.
That's our contribution. Always
For real,
complains that he's
let's
the
do
one
this
editing.
podcast real quick, bro. I need to cut. Wow. But anyways, Kanye went on a Twitter rant, just to say the least. Right?
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, it wasn't more of a rant. It was more like he expressed his opinions on Donald Trump, and that just got horrible reception.
Yeah.
And then he, Kanye in his own, flamboyant style just went off on everyone.
Yeah.
You
Things
saw the
got,
John Legend situation.
Yes, that's when I was like,
that was a little bit too far.
yeah, I knew this was a promo run when I saw
John
Big
Legend's
Sean,
text, yeah.
Big Sean, Justin Bieber,
Snoop Dogg.
Drake, unfollowed him.
Drake unfollowed him?
Yes, bro.
Oh
I mean,
my
Drake don't
goodness.
care. I mean, Drake, that's not a big deal. Big Sean, bro. Big Sean, Kanye brought Big Sean, right? Big Sean went to a studio and rapped for Kanye, and that's how he got up.
I seen the video.
That's what I'm saying. He changed his life, and you unfollowed him. That's when I was like, yo, this shit might be
Is
serious.
this wait, time out? Is this all because he supports Donald Trump?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. It boils down to that, yeah.
But it didn't start like that. It started was like he posted, yo, this music
girl-
coming out.
Yeah, and then he posted this girl that was a super conservative.
Yeah.
Personally, I like her. I really like her viewpoints
Candace Owens?
too. Yeah, Candace
that's
Owens.
her
Yeah, I
name.
kind of like her, and I like her viewpoint. So it was like, oh man, this kind of hurts because it's like, all right, is there a place for conservative Black people now? Like, because I mean, like when it comes to economy, like I kind of agree with some conservative ideology. Except maybe like with the exception of few, like
like the
social-
border.
Yeah, I mean, the border was a bit too far, and like the whole social, what is it called,
What
Social
about,
Security and Medicaid. Like, I'm more liberal when it comes to those things, but I don't know, like the conservative, the Christian conservative. That's kind of how I was brought up. So it's like I can feel for Kanye a bit. So it was like, man, this is just horrible, bro. Like his friends unfollowed him. That's like
That's
social
like
execution.
Yeah.
No, I
But-
don't think
but
they
you
like
look
really unfollowed him. I think it's more of just a public persona. Like, in the public, I can't be, I can't
Associated.
afford to be looked at like I associate with this person. But
That
I don't think
hurts, bro.
anybody's in.
Not exactly.
Yeah, but we're talking about Kanye though, bro.
Yeah, but
He's at the epitome. Like, what's
He's
going on?
Yeah.
like a
But
father
there-
for
there
these
are-
niggas, bro.
Alright, bro.
Yeah,
You
but
were
go
trying
ahead,
to say,
Christian.
Christian?
But there are there's like the thing about him's like the conservative thing.
Mhm.
It's majority of conservative like aims have already been done. Like Obamacare is privatized healthcare. We already recognize Israel as Jerusalem. We've already bombed Assad. We've done everything that like the neocon, like baseline establishment Republican, like has wet dreams about. Basically,
Yeah,
we're not
but-
going to get universal healthcare.
Yeah,
And then when you look at, for example,
but liberals have made
you know
strides
Lauryn
too.
Hill? Do you know who Lauryn Hill is?
Yeah.
You know she got banned from Israel because she wanted to play at the Palestinian territories, like the capital Ramallah. And like people on the internet harassed her because she said she didn't want to associate with apartheid. Like you're more likely to get away with, for example, you're more likely to get away with being a Trump supporter than you are, for example, let's say,
oh no,
have
no, not at
have
all.
like
But the thing is liberals have made massive strides too. Like, gay marriage is a thing now. It seems like public mass media is more liberal. I think Facebook, when they were put up against Congress, one of the big issues that they ran into was a majority of the things on Facebook were liberal.
Yeah,
like,
but
it seemed like
biased.
it was biased.
Okay, but when you look at the polls for the average Republican, it's like only like 51% disagree with gay marriage. The other like 48% agree. So that's not necessarily like a universally liberal thing, and that's more social libertarian. When you look at like universal health care, for example, ending the war on drugs, Republicans, especially black conservatives, have nothing to say about it because that's something that disproportionately affects black people. When I think of black conservative, I think of Sheriff Clark, if you know who that is. I think of Larry Elder, Ben Carson. Basically, black people who, I'm not gonna like call Uncle Tom because that's like incredibly childish thing to do.
Stupid,
because and at the same time, let's remember,
we call
conservatives.
Oh
Conservatives call white people. Conservatives call white people who are liberal and are aware of racism against black people cucks. You probably heard that name before to a white person. They call them cucks all the time, and they make a stereotype like basically like, They
don't know what a cuck is like.
Hey man, I'm a specialist in cucks. Don't.
You know what that is?
I
don't know what cuck means.
Let's go explain what a cuck is.
All right, I'll explain what a cuck is. Basically, it used to the cuckold is where the word comes from. Cuckold basically means it's like a fetish. You like somebody you like to watch somebody do your wife right in front of you.
Yeah,
a
like
cuck,
someone bangs your wife.
The political definition of a cuck is basically a white person. It's the opposite of Uncle Tom, basically. It's a white person who embraces the history of racism, but they go further. They're like, they probably like, good luck. You're probably going to get raped by illegal immigrants like that. Like, that's what they think.
That's messed up.
They
knew that was I didn't know that was a thing. I had no idea.
It is a thing. Just look up like liberal cuck or something like that. It's always liberal or communist or leftist or SJW cuck. Like, you always read that on the internet. So it's like when you hear people say Uncle Tom, you're equally likely to find somebody on the internet, a conservative, to call a white person a cuck. So it's like it kind of goes both ways. But when you talk about things like racism, especially to a black conservative, they always like to say like, it's the nanny state, it's the welfare state, it's black people not working hard enough, or police brutality exists because black people are over-policed because they have higher crime rates. Even though that's somewhat true, when you look at, like, for example, the Chicago torture case where like 8,000 people were held against their will in a project in Beaumont Square, Chicago, they were tortured, anally probed, waterboarded without any trial.
What the heck?
Damn, what the hell is this?
You gotta Google that.
Look it up.
Yeah,
Chicago Beaumont Square torture case. And Rahm Emanuel, the mayor, he gave $5.5 million to the 9,000 people after they were being held for like 15 years without a trial. If you divide that amongst 9,000 people, that's $800. And when you explain that to a conservative, I would argue that that's also a hate crime because disproportionately 92% of those Chicago residents were black when Chicago black population is only 38%.
And Christian, you're talking about the 2017 Chicago torture incident where the two...
No, this went from 2004, 2002, all the way up to 2016.
Okay, could you describe the
case?
Could you give that... I don't know what that incident is. Could you mind giving that context?
He just said that, they were held against their will and they were tortured. He said anally probed, other things.
Waterboarded, beaten with metal rods, cattle props.
This was like black people that were tortured?
These were black people. Out of the 9,000 people that were held, 91% were African American in a city where they only make up 38% and they only make up 41% of the crime. So meaning it was twice the proportion that they commit crime. So they were like disproportionately targeted. Why? It's not a rocket science to know why close to 9,000 black men were thrown into basically a black, what was the police equivalent to a CIA black site. It's because they're black. And to hear like black people like Lil Wayne at one point on Nightline said like racism doesn't exist or shit like that, and if you look at all this data,
he said a white cop saved him.
I've heard
when he was 12 or something.
Like the guy that said about conservatism how it's hard to be. I've heard you say that like you hate people saying that racism doesn't exist. 99% of the time, that's a conservative saying that.
Yeah,
it's not a.
Well, that's extreme. Like, there's So Vox did an amazing video on this as well. How
Vox are not that liberal in general. They're actually libertarian when you look at their policies on Israel.
Yeah,
they're like hardline Zionists. So
yeah, well, like, they did a video on conservatism and the state of conservatism in America, like today, and they mentioned how Donald Trump tends to be extremist in his viewpoints, and that kind of makes other conservatives look, less like there's they use this analogy that there's a spectrum, right, of conservatism and liberalism, obviously left and right. So Trump tends to be on the most extreme side, so that makes other conservatives along the spectrum look normal. Like they say, it's called. They even had a name for it. It's an actual psychological term called normalization of something. I forgot the name.
Yeah, it's normalization or the desensitization or something.
Yeah, something
when you
along.
Desensitize somebody to create a norm.
Yeah,
because the ceiling in which you created that norm on has been broken.
Yeah,
and the whole like foundation of it falls on its face. And then the new norm is like kind of like fashion choice, for example. Like women, they couldn't wear pants. They couldn't show their legs, and then one day in the 1920s, someone wore jeans to like Hollywood, and everyone wore jeans, and then the whole long skirt thing became like ancient history.
Yeah, and
like it's kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that with Jaden Smith now. So everyone's gonna be wearing skirts 2020.
Oh, hell no.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hell.
But in all seriousness,
I'd wear a kimono.
Actually, I take that back.
I think everyone
I'd put on a nice.
Kimono.
What's that country?
What country?
The golfing country. I don't even know what it's called. I've seen it on some.
Saudi Arabia?
Oh, Scotland. You're thinking of Scotland.
Yeah, but
skirts.
what's the skirt called? There's like a specific name for it.
Oh, the kilt.
Kilt. I'd rock a kilt, bro.
That's like short,
I
bro.
don't give a fuck, bro. I'd
Y'all
rock that
niggas
kilt.
straight up.
Welcome,
No, I
bro.
never said I'll do that.
No, I'm just saying the fact that
I had to
y'all
put a
like
plural on
considering wearing.
Nah, I do it for the
don't know,
culture,
bro.
though, bro. I do it for the culture, bro.
Fuck no, bro.
Actually, no, I might do that too, man. I mean, I
Like
don't
you
know
both
what the-
bangling and shit, bro. Like,
If
Bro.
you went to Greenland, bro.
Hey, did you
or
hear that? Did you
whatever
hear that
other
one
country
thing
is?
where they used to like the soldiers there used to moon their like opponents before battle or something like that? Like, that was a thing. I swear. I swear.
You know, the Scottish armed forces during World War One, they still wore kilts into like battle. So like during the fall, they would still wear like the same kilt that they wore in the spring, and then like in the winter.
That just
but
doesn't
hey,
sound
listen,
like
like
a good
honor.
idea.
No, that's good for combat. Yo, that frees up the legs. Yo, that's a head kick, dude.
bro, you wearing
ever
that
go to
in
UFC?
winter, bro?
Okay, in winter that's a different. That's a different story.
Exactly.
But
In war
if
and
you-
trench and shit.
if you're in the
that
summer,
You gotta
makes sense.
if
skydive
you're in
and
the
like
summer, that's a head kick. It's
scraped
easy.
on the floor, like and like get in
Oh,
position.
yeah,
All of a
that's true,
sudden,
too.
no,
But
hell
yeah.
no.
Your legs get.
And the soldier next to you have a
wanted
hard
to-
dick and you
Hey,
can
you
see
never
that
know.
shit. Come on,
They
bro.
can have
Fuck
leggings
no.
under. Okay, all
Come
right,
on,
that's a
bro.
little-
You're laying
No,
down
no,
trying
no.
to.
That's a little
You're
too
laying
far.
down prone. Meanwhile, your buddy's laying prone behind you too.
Okay, that's a little bit too
I
far.
don't know.
Let's
Yeah,
get back.
that's-
Let's,
I know about that.
let's get
Kanye
back to the
thing?
conservative thing. But
The
with the
Kanye. Oh, you want to go back to the Kanye thing or the?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go back to the Kanye.
Okay, let's go back to Kanye.
All right.
Just to like
What I
say
wanna-
my opinion on that real quick. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't follow like the politics as much as you guys do, but I think it's kind of crazy just like the fact that a famous black celebrity that likes Trump is like very looked down upon in the black community. Isn't
You know why? Because when you see Kanye's history,
This is what Trump
Kanye is a
stands
person who said Bush does not care about white people, black people.
Yeah.
Like that's where Kanye is coming from.
Okay.
I think it ties deeply into capitalism because let me like try to bear with you like from my point of view because I'm a Marxist. I'm a member of the PSF. But, which is
if
the
you
party
could get
for
closer to the mic, by the way.
basically what my opinion is you have a capitalist, Kanye West, and you look at Kanye West like he was somewhat progressive in his like political
very progressive
mentality. Like, for example, his mother worked for Jesse Jackson during the Project Rainbow thing, which was supposed to help people that were when Jesse Jackson was running for president in the 80s, and like Kanye West, until his fire after Hurricane Katrina, he made that video, Bush doesn't care about black people. And basically, you get the modem that he's some form of like guy that's trying to question something, but really that doesn't mean anything because if you want to talk about racism, let's talk about worker alienation in the third world. Kanye West, all of his shoes, Yeezys, and clothes are made in sweatshops in China, you know, in
That's true.
Indonesia and
Yeah,
Vietnam.
but most.
So when
that's
you
how it
think
is
about
for a lot of.
capitalism,
How does this tie to capitalism? Like, why do you?
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna answer why.
I'm super for capitalism.
There's a thing in Marxism called cultivated identity.
Okay.
People who have and sometimes cultivated identity can be broken. Like people have a lot of cultivated identity towards Yeezys, even though it's the sneakers I read on my documentary on I think it was Democracy Now. They say the leather and rubber is like $15, but
Oh yeah, it's pretty.
basically
Yeah.
when you have someone like Kanye, who's a rich capitalist who's benefited from the exploitation of third world people, and people call him racist or Uncle Tom for liking Trump, but they don't call him racist for taking advantage of labor in the third world. It's kind of dishonest.
Yeah,
Or-
but that's not where racism is, though.
Wait,
Why
so what do
isn't?
you-
Why isn't? No. Let me talk. Why isn't not liking Obama when he was president? He allowed the Chicago torture case to happen. Is like Uncle Tom. Why isn't we? Why can't we call Obama an Uncle Tom to liberalism, which has historically alienated black people?
Whoa, so
You know,
wait,
That's the problem.
are you like? Would you align your ideals with communism? Like, do you believe in?
Yeah, my favorite leader, just to give you an idea what my political
I'm sorry.
Joseph
I
Stalin-
thought this nigga was
Joseph
to go
Stalin-
extreme on us.
Emperor Hoxha, Joseph Stalin,
You said
Emperor
Joseph.
Hoxha.
Wait, hold on. You said Joseph Stalin?
Yes.
Isn't
Jesus
that-
Christ! That's the dictator that killed,
Isn't that
Okay,
Italy?
no.
responsible for.
What country
The
was he
biggest
from?
massacre
from-
My
more
God.
than Germany.
That doesn't compare to the millions that have been
Christ.
killed in colonialism. You know, in British India, George Orwell, in
the
his
trilogy.
diary, Letters to Burma.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the many British officers that protested against the British colonial government when the Great Famine of 1928 killed around 30 million Indians. Like that's actually 30%.
You know what you're doing is
So wait, that's like
you comparing
teetering the
two
line.
things that are not
No.
equivalent.
What
bro.
I'm saying is you're talking about the death of millions, but I don't see you at all once questioning imperialism or colonialism because those are worse. They've killed way more people.
Yeah,
Let's say the
but
numbers
that doesn't make what you're
let me-
saying right, though.
But look, a capitalist
finish.
society it's great though. Like
No,
what
it's
I'm saying?
very
a
great.
communist society, you'll have an oppression of people with the.
Am I
like it's like
talking to Nahum right now? Are you the Nahum guy?
No,
no,
this
I'm
is
not- no,
Isaac.
This is Isaac.
All right, Isaac. You notice that the United States has 25% of the world's prison population. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And you also know that since 2000, 64,000 people have died in American prisons for nonviolent drug offenses. You know that, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Wait, so
And
60,000
2.5
since when?
According to Edward Snowden in the NSA, 2.5 million Iraqi civilians died in the U.S. War in Iraq. So when you look at the United States and capitalism and see how close it's tied to imperialism, you have to accept that in the name of creating capitalism, you have to kill millions of people either in the third world or your own countrymen. All these
You think that's
successful
all
capitalists.
fueled? You think that's all basic? That's all fueled on the fact that we're in a capitalist
Fueled on
society.
imperialism.
Okay, but that's different from you know,
Absolutely different.
yeah.
You know what?
From the
I noticed
capitalist-
one thing you're doing. So
You're trying to tie it into communism versus capitalism.
you're saying, yo, we did this in Iraq. We have the highest prisoners in the
right.
world.
That's a
but
human
that,
rights epidemic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we're
sure,
a
sure, but
democracy.
that doesn't mean
we're
that-
a democratic society.
Yeah.
So our people.
No, we're not. Was it democratic for those 9,000 people held against their will in Chicago?
No, we're not saying
Well,
it's perfect.
well,
We're
you
saying
can't
that-
point to
Oh,
like
it's
that's
not
what you're
individual
doing.
cases.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah,
You're
can't-
picking one things that are bad and you throwing the whole system away. We can't do that.
Yeah, when you're comparing ourselves to like countries like China, that's like a
I
communist
never
society.
compared it to China. See,
But
that's
it's a communist
straw man.
society.
You're putting words into my mouth, dude. You're putting words into my mouth.
No,
I
you're
never
right.
said anything.
No,
China.
you haven't. You haven't said that. But I'm saying, in comparison to a communist society like China,
Yeah.
I would like to think that we
compared
have
to
a
country
better.
like Cuba, for example, that has one of the lowest prison population. Guess what? A country with the largest embargo. You know what it's done with its large embargo? It's created a vaccination that stops women infected with HIV from transmitting it to children.
I'm glad.
They're on the verge-
I'm glad
Let
you
me
brought
finish.
Cuba.
They're on the verge of curing AIDS, while the United States, with our trillion-dollar big pharmaceutical industry, have cured nothing.
Okay,
Not
do you
to
know
mention,
in
we make
Cuba
people
that
pay for
taxi
healthcare.
drivers actually make more money than doctors? How can you explain that?
Oh yeah, that's true.
How can I explain that? Because there's no profit motive in Cuba, so you wouldn't be making more money than a taxi driver.
So there's pros and cons.
I should live in a communist world and
why in communism you don't make more than a taxi driver? Because I'm the communist, right? I have to explain myself, correct?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You said I'm the communist, so the communist, I have to explain why, what's it called? I have to explain why a taxi driver could potentially make more money than a doctor.
Yeah, right? How can you explain that?
All right, I'm going to explain it right now to you. In communism, there's no class. Because in capitalism, we have classes of people that we pay intentionally more money. Because this creates a thing in communism where we communists call class war, where different classes of people compete against each other for their own interests.
Exactly. Just like how it's supposed to be.
So look, to boil it down, there's pros and cons.
The government is designed that you make significantly less as a doctor compared to a capitalist country because you make... This is what...
It's not good.
Let him finish.
This is what wage work in communism. They give you money to live off of, and they give you an extra amount of money for the task that you've done. There's no profit motive at all.
So
that's not a good thing.
For example, let's say I'm in Cuba right now.
It's going to stifle innovation.
Exactly.
It's gonna
Everybody going to be like,
there's
okay,
pros and cons to
I can eat today, so I'm cool. I don't need to worry and innovate myself or come up with a new thing.
Yeah, that's why we have government regulation for things like pharmaceutical.
All right, so I'm answering two people at once. I was gonna make an example. I was gonna go further. I'm gonna answer your thing, like you said. Oh, I have money to eat. I have enough money to buy food to eat. Let me answer that for a second. What I was gonna say was I lost track of thought. But let me try to remember it for a second.
But okay, what's your
let me say I'm about to say it. Let's say I'm a head of a hospital. Right? 1 second. Okay, so let's say I'm head of a hospital in Cuba.
Yes.
Versus being head of a hospital in America. The state will give me somewhat of a higher wage because I'm the manager of that hospital, but it won't be significant because it will create a class conflict as a manager and a worker. Yes. Now, in some communist countries, you have like elections and people are elected to be the manager. And those are called cooperatives. So yes, you can still have like markets and everything in communism, but they would exist as cooperatives. For example, like workers in a factory, they would vote in a referendum who would become the president.
Okay.
And if they don't like the boss, they can vote him out. That's how it is. That's democracy, and that's what Marx believes in. It's workers owning the means of production.
Okay, but then there's zero incentive for anybody to be innovative and make a lot. Like this
how come Cuba with no free marketplace for its healthcare? How come it created a vaccine that
like I mentioned,
HIV. Let me finish. How come it created a vaccine that stopped women with HIV from giving it to their children if there's only 2,000 people out of 12 million people with AIDS? Like how come? You're playing a very popular fallacy. You're saying that because there's no market, there's no incentive. That's not true.
I mean, that's
just like saying if there's no financial incentive to not beat your kids, you won't beat your kids. You won't beat your kids because it's wrong.
That's an extreme example.
That's a good example because you didn't explain why that exists.
Let me explain why. Look, we believe that there should be government stepping in, government regulation for things like pharmaceutical companies, because we all know that with the capitalists. But I'm saying we think we that should happen, and because we have a democratic society where people vote for bills and laws and legislation to come through, that things like that can be taken into place, because everybody has a voice in our society, right? So if there's injustice, there can be protests. There's not suppression of voice like in China and the Chinese.
Look at what happens in peaceful protests in the United States. Look at the hundreds. Just in general, you
can't ever have anything perfect. Like we mentioned, there's never going to be anything perfect.
Exactly, you're just still using the same fallacy. Yeah. Since something bad happened, let's throw the whole system away.
Yeah, but when you compare to Western countries, majority of their wealth comes from imperialism, and that's not democratic whatsoever.
Okay, but imperialism. I mean, that's a okay.
And
That's
you
a
look
given.
at
That's
Cuba,
very bad.
how come, again, you haven't took it, I'm repeating this point because you're not taking it into consideration. How come Cuba, a country, a communist country with one of the longest embargoes right now in the world, has created a vaccine to stop women who have children from transmitting their disease to their children? Like, there's no private incentive. And remember,
We don't know we don't know. Like, we
that's a
honestly
rare-
have.
No, that's
you're not-
very
why do I
impressive for a
have to
country
take-
to do that. Like, for example, for Cuba to be able to do that, where doctors and that kind of medicine field isn't as incentivized as like in a capitalist system. And that's
No,
rare
I'm
that it
saying
happens,
that-
but
oh, no,
you
it's
can't.
not.
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can't use
You
that
can't use that
argument
They would
to
rather-
justify.
they would
You
rather
can't use
create
one
hatred.
instance to justify
I'm gonna
the whole
answer that
thing.
question.
That's
I'm going to answer that question. It's because the incentive will be to make medication to subsidize the disease, not cure the disease. Just like how, for example, there are insulin, but there's no government research into curing diabetes.
And that's why we mentioned there should be
That's
government
capitalism,
regulation.
because you have to keep it's called product obsolescence. You have to create shitty products that people buy at consumer stores that they will buy over and over and over. It keeps you in store.
Look,
that's why I would admit
we're
to
not-
some extent communist countries are not as wealthy as capitalist countries.
We're not disagreeing with you.
When they produce stuff on the commodity market, they don't make it so that we'll make a big profit.
We're not disagreeing with you.
Communist
We're agreeing
countries,
with
they
that.
make food to feed their people. They don't make it for the market.
Listen. We're not disagreeing with you on that. Obviously, a capitalist, ideology in fields like medicine or in pharmaceuticals is bad. We don't give them an incentive for money, but that's why we think there should be government regulation in those fields, and that's why we have people, representatives, to advocate for that and advocate against that.
Okay, so you believe in social democracy then, like in Canada, Sweden, Denmark, where they have like a government-run healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, but that's not capitalism. That's social democracy. That's completely different.
But we're allowing in our current government system, we're allowing social democracy to happen. Anybody that has representation or voice can.
Social democracy is the state subsidizing the people's basic needs and forcing capitalist owners to pay hefty taxes to pay for the common good of the society.
Yeah.
That's not capitalism. You notice that, right?
Okay, but do you know Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders ran.
He's a social democrat. He's not a socialist in any stripe or form. He's a social democrat.
He's a social democrat, and he ran to have his views expressed. Right, a lot of the things he said just lined up with what you just mentioned. And our current democratic system, he had a grassroots movement, and he had success. He had complete success.
Talk one at a time, please. Talk one at a time.
First of all, he wasn't successful. If you look at the DNC lawsuits that went through. All right, can I answer, or are you going to cut me off?
Okay, continue.
All right. So Bernie Sanders, if you look at the DNC 2017 lawsuit, it showed that because of the Democratic National Convention was a private institution, they did not have to go by any federal laws. You know why? Because it's a capitalist organization.
Yeah, but you can run as an independent.
No. Let me finish. I'm not even done with my point. And what happened was it showed that in the New York City, like many cities like the New York City Board of Election, purged 700,000 Bernie Sanders voters. And it said that in total, the DNC lawsuit, there was a voter fraud of 4 million votes, meaning that Hillary Clinton, during the primary, stole 4 million votes from Bernie Sanders. And it's a fact. Bernie Sanders is even accepted it.
Yeah, we know that.
Let me finish. If you look at Bernie Sanders' foreign policy, it's typical bourgeois social democracy imperialism. He's pro-war in Syria. He's pro-Israel because he's Jewish. I mean, that's not racist, but that's just identity politics. And he called people Jews who don't like Israel and self-hating Jews, which is pretty racist to say. It's to imply that one ethnic group has to be loyal to the group.
We're not arguing that. We're not arguing
that. But what
I'm
saying is that there's nothing socialist about that.
No, we're not arguing his viewpoints. We're arguing the fact that he had an opportunity. He had an opportunity.
He backed off from the Democratic Socialist label and became a social democrat.
So what?
Look at
He had an
became
opportunity to voice his opinions. How radical?
That's the only thing we want to point out right now.
We give that opportunity in our current society.
He's a New Deal Democrat. That's not radical.
Doesn't matter what he is.
Wasn't there a
But he
person called
he had
This
viewpoints
Nuts
that are radical.
running for president?
Yeah.
This Nuts?
Yeah,
Dead
This
ass.
Nuts. I think it was actually for.
That was
Oh,
like
the
13-year-old submission or
I think
something
it was
like
for
that.
like a mayor of.
no,
No, it was for
For
president.
president?
For president,
Yeah.
bro. 2016.
That's what I'm saying.
These nuts.
We
Nuts.
can have. We
voted.
just got Trump elected into office, and he had like radical viewpoints.
Exactly.
Right. Bernie Sanders had radical. We're arguing the fact that we have these opportunities, right? We have
To
people like
express
this to come
ourselves.
into office, and change
No.
the entire landscape of our society.
I might not support Trump, but the way how he went about it and how the system allowed him to get in, I support that.
Yeah, and the
That's
same thing
like-
with Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
Like, he.
All right, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, many of the only reasons that Trump won is because him and Hillary were the two most unpopular presidential candidates in American history. Also, for every 1 hour that was spent on the presidential campaign,
Wait, how do you
Trump was
justify that,
Yeah, because
brother? How do you justify
made it
that?
far? They weren't.
polls. Look at the
Polls?
poll. Look
Did
at
they have the
poll
least
right-
votes?
Well, yeah, I mean, because the presidential
No, I'm
pool
saying
during that time wasn't the best.
They had the least popular for like both sides.
I'm not following.
One second.
Hello? Yeah, I think he's preoccupied. I think someone just walked into his room. But like nobody, how's that justified to say that that they were the least?
Oh, that is true.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Because they
I
got
wouldn't be
data
surprised.
way back to like the 70s and the 80s.
He's talking about like the candidates' popularity.
No, he said like they were the least favorite,
No, they're the
Candidate?
most hated.
Yes, least favorable.
least favorable, or least voted for.
Least favorable.
So the
Yeah, no, I
public
mean, I
did
wouldn't
not
be
like 'em.
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah,
that makes sense,
How does that
this-
deal with anything though?
yeah,
That-
because
that
this
doesn't
whole-
tie
What I'm
into-
saying is that they weren't what exactly the people voted. Like majority of Trump supporters voted for Trump because they were afraid of Hillary.
No.
And
Yeah,
vice
yeah. This
versa.
was like
No,
the pick
yeah.
up between the two
Think about
evils.
it.
Yeah, lesser
Think
of two
about it.
evils.
If-
Listen, but
Let me speak.
that's not a problem of the people though. That's a problem of the applicant pool. The people that ran for election just weren't popular amongst the people. You know what I'm saying? The people still had the option to vote for them.
Exactly.
If there was
Right.
if there was inaction due to
No.
less voters
In
or
fact,
people
one
that
of the things. Okay, one of the things that is not democratic about our system.
If you
is
could,
that-
Christian, if you could get a little closer to the mic, I don't know if you like.
Can you hear me better? Can you hear me better?
You went a little like. Is it just me, or did he go a little quieter?
sounds fine.
yeah, I
Okay.
think it's straight.
Basically, what happened was what's it called? Can you hear me perfectly right now?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think it was just
Okay,
me.
one of the problems and this has more to do with us debating about capitalism and whatever, but one of the things in America that almost no country on the planet has is that, for example, if you get convicted of a crime, you can't vote for the rest of your life. You know
They're
that,
changing that. They've changed that in
No,
Virginia.
they're not.
Isn't that
They
if
allowed
you're
it-
a
that's-
felon?
yeah,
If
they
you're a
allow-
felon,
yeah.
not
Oh my God! Every time I say something, two of you guys jump right in before I can even finish. But what I was gonna say, what?
This is how we have our podcast, bro. Like you can't.
Sure.
This is how it goes. Anyway, so go
Okay,
ahead.
But 'cause I don't wanna talk over anybody. That's the problem.
Okay, but go ahead.
Okay, so the problem with that is that you can easily your civil liberties are basically taken from you over basically legislation. A real democracy would be like somewhere where we could have liberal referendums. That's the democracy.
What do you mean by
Okay.
liberal? What do you mean by
We're not a
liberal left
democracy,
referendums? Like,
Can
what do
we
you mean
speak
by that?
now?
Huh?
Can we speak now? Are you done? No, seriously, I'm
Yeah,
being
go
serious.
right ahead, dude.
So
Because what the thing is like every time I make a point, you guys don't regard it whatsoever, and then I have to listen to you and make your points. And most of your points have nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's because we're trying to get on the same page. Like
Yeah, you're veering off from the original argument.
I'm saying that
we're talking about like capitalism and communism, and when you pick straw man arguments, we have to go to that. And let's just keep going. What am I saying?
I
Alright,
don't
well,
know. I'm
one of the
trying.
things that capitalism has a problem with is that imperialism, like I said earlier, but dictatorship, for example, Wayane in Ethiopia, the Kabila regime in Congo, where in the Kabila regime in their civil war, they said that exactly like 13 million people died between like 1998 to 2009. You know.
Wait, so
What
is
dictatorship-
like
How's
you're
this dealing
like
with the-
yeah, I'm confused on
Yeah,
what
but-
you're talking
What
about
I'm
right
saying
now.
is that
Like, what's like the overall point of the what you're trying to say?
Oh my God! Capitalist countries have had a the moment I said that Joseph Stalin's a great leader, you called him a mass murderer, and I'm pointing out a mass murderous regime that the U.S.
Stalin
and
was.
capitalist countries support. That's my counter argument.
I think I'm missing something. How did we get?
Yeah.
What are you missing?
No, he means
you're not.
the Stalin point. when
If
he
you're going to
mentioned
tell me
Stalin.
that's your first disagreement with Stalin is that he was a mass murderer, my disagreement with capitalism is that there are dictatorships that the U.S. government and capitalist countries support that are even more murderous.
There's no dictatorships in a capitalist. What
What are you
dictatorship
talking about?
has U.S.
That is
experienced?
That's a really, really, really weak straw man. Because then who supports, for example, one regime, Saudi Arabia, a nation where women just last year were able to drive, where honor killings and beheadings are commonplace. Which country supports that, dude? The United
talking
States. And
about?
we
Okay,
have
but,
it.
Yeah, we
but
support that. You're right.
No,
You're
no,
right.
you're
no, he's right.
nitpicking
No, no,
something.
that's
Has
not
your
it. Though.
built to-
That's not it. You have to be able to, Christian. You have to be able to separate how a country runs itself versus how it or the countries that it operates with. You can't just
Okay,
say
so
since
we're
you're a
arguing-
capitalist system, you can't just say you can't operate with any other country that's not capitalist. You
No.
do whatever you can to benefit your country, and you run your country in a capitalist system. You can't say, well, that's not right because Saudi it's working with Saudi Arabia, and look at the way they treat their people. That's you can't make that
Okay.
argument.
No, but because then you can't make the argument about certain people in communism that have supposedly, according to your like historical opinion, have committed atrocities.
Well,
Because
no,
then
yeah.
I could argue all the scientific contributions communism has given to the world,
No,
and
we
then
just-
just make
but
mine
we just
up.
pointed that out
That
as
was
something
my
that
gain,
was
and I could
amazing.
just say,
Okay.
No, we didn't
When
use
we
that.
point out like Joseph Stalin and we say all those mass murders, you can point and say, "Oh, it's Joseph Stalin
let me
that,
talk.
that did a country that ran a country I can't even say it in a
Nazi invasion.
fuck, I can't even say it.
Here, let me. So
ahead.
when we said that thing about Joseph Stalin committing atrocities, we didn't tie that to the main argument by saying, "Oh, that's
No,
why communists can never work." No, we're just basically saying that with the capitalist democratic society that we have in America, it's amazing, it's thriving, and it's
But
good.
that's what you're
the
doing,
argument that
though.
we're making.
Incredibly,
This-
no, that's
the Stalin point-
incredibly like, no, that's just patronizing because there are so many dictatorships at the United States government. And at any time,
There's
let's
no
say at any time of
dictatorships.
capitalism, let me talk, at any time of capitalism, in the 1950s, in the 20th century, in even before that, in the early days, which most like when I debate like libertarians, they always talk about how like the 1700s was the height of the free market because there was not a lot of regulation.
Government, yeah.
Look at any time, the majority of the United States' entire history has been invading other countries. You know that in the United States is I think close to 300 years of existence. It's only had 14 years of peace. So for every couple of years, it invades and occupies another country and takes its resources.
And you think
Majority of the most successful capitalist countries are former colonial empires and are nations that are puppet states of U.S. imperialism.
So
You know,
because of
Saudi
that,
Arabia, for example, Saudi
You're
Arabia,
saying
the
that's wrong
11th
'cause
richest nation.
because of that,
communist
11th
mentality, yeah.
Huh?
No, I was just speaking with him. Like you're saying that imperialism exists because America's run on the communist mentality.
I'm saying, in the words of Lenin, imperialism is literally the highest stage of capitalism.
Yeah. Well, here's
Yeah,
what we're
right?
saying. We're not purely like we're not purely.
we're not saying the system is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, we're not saying the system
You
is
said it was
perfect,
the
and
best
also.
system, and I'm begging to
Oh,
differ.
No,
It's not
no,
as
it's
long
a
as
mixture.
false.
You got you're neglecting
System
the fact
compared
that
to other
you're neglecting
systems that are out there,
You're
right?
you're neglecting the fact that this is also a democratic system. There's people anytime we've gone to war, there's people that vocalize their opinions on the fact that we went to war. There's people that have vocally outspoken against it because of the society that we currently have. We can have you voicing your opinion against it, and then you taking action by having representation, calling your representative,
And
we're
if-
allowing that to happen because we have a mixture of a democratic society and a capitalist society.
Yeah, and if you get enough people to back your opinion, or if enough people agree with your opinion, changes will happen within the
Yeah,
country.
we've seen
We
that
can see
happen.
that on the Vietnam War.
problem is-
We had to
Yeah,
bring the
Vietnam
soldiers
War.
back because everybody was protesting
Okay,
outside.
I'm answering three people at once. That's not
we're
really
just-
fair.
No,
Can
we're not
can I
asking-
address
We're talking
We're not
about the
asking
same
three
point,
questions.
Christian.
We're not asking three questions, man. We're just
We're
all,
talking. We all talking about the same point.
No, but the problem
basically
is
talking
that
to a one person,
when you're talking, when you're talking to me, you're talking to a wall. Is that what you're saying?
huh?
Is that what you just said?
What did you say? I
No,
didn't-
we're just talking
I
about
heard something
the
like that.
point.
No, we didn't say
We
that.
didn't say that.
I didn't catch that. What did you say?
He said when you're talking to me, you're talking to a wall. Or is that what you guys
No,
are saying?
no. He said, "Is that what you guys are saying?" But no, that's not what we're saying. We're
No.
saying,
No. I thought I heard one of you guys say that. That's
No,
what-
No, no,
no,
Christian,
But
come on,
anyways,
bro.
What I'm trying to say is that, like my earlier point, majority of the world's successful capitalist economies have Canadian imperialism. Majority of economies are founded on it.
but
When
like-
I said
like-
that the Seyoum,
but
when I
like
said
you're not replying to the what we just said. Like when we say,
it's not democratic. What's democratic about going to a third world country, invading it, occupying it, taking the resources? What's democratic
It's
about
democratic
talking
that the
about
fact
how-
that people can speak against it, that people can take action.
No, they're not. You have the Patriot Act. Anyone who does a considerable or an effective resistance against the state will be punished. Look
okay,
at it.
we-
let
that
me
was
give you an
taken into
example.
place
No,
because
let me
of 9/11, right?
let me give you an example, Christian. Let me give you an example. No, let me give you an example, Christian. Remember when Obama?
Christian, you gotta
Christian,
let us stop.
Christian, remember when Obama wanted to throw? There was like some chemical attacks or something, and Obama wanted to bomb Syria.
Yeah.
A while back, and all of
he
a
said-
sudden, the people said,
Yeah.
"Yo, what the hell? What are you talking about? We just got out of there. Why
Yeah,
are
he
you trying to
said-
put us back in there?" And
That's
that right
crossing
then
the
and
red
then,
line.
because of the people, it got shut down right there.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, but he's talking about the Patriot Act that
The
basically
problem is
allows.
that
2001.
I'm telling you considerable examples of resistance against that go with outside the establishment line. So I said Edward Snowden because take the NSA, one of the largest surveillance campaign in human history of any type.
Yeah, because
you know.
technology has improved enough to.
Yeah.
allow
Are
us
you
to
against that?
But no, I'm completely against that, but let me finish. The biggest opponent to it was Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Look at them now. They have ridiculous charges against them that are based on a bogus premise. You're talking about a bunch of, most of which were Republicans who voted against the war. They only voted against the war because they didn't like Obama doing it. If you look at Trump's bombing of Syria, the same people who voted against Obama voted for Trump for bombing Syria. They just didn't like Obama doing it. And also,
So what-
the
what's
United States armed the Syrian rebels there. So all they have to do is destabilizing the regime by supporting terrorists. And there are U.S. military forces in Syria right now, and before and during when he said he wanted to bomb it. So, like, your argument is like you're basically using public PR as your argument, but when
We're
you
in
look
Syria
at the
right
data,
now
when you
because
look at
Obama's out
no,
of
no, no,
office. Donald
when you look
Trump.
at, like, for example, things that have been exposed, like, for example, like Bradley Manning or Edward Snowden, nothing what you're saying is
That's a different
congruent.
case.
No, and-
That's a different case.
That's the exact case.
They're whistleblowers. They
No.
leak
Edward. So are you
information.
saying that Edward Snowden was under a justified case to be thrown into jail?
Okay, no,
Oh,
I'm not saying that. But we're saying
absolutely.
You think so? Okay,
Yeah.
well here,
Yeah,
but
you think he should be
they're
thrown in jail?
whistleblowers, though. You're talking about extreme cases of
Yes.
of expression of speech. You're talking about leaking government, like classified government information.
You know how many
Okay.
people
Of
he
course there's
put
gonna
in
be-
danger because he whistleblowed?
0.
What?
Send me. All right, right now, because unless you can prove
Okay.
it, it's not.
L-
I
let's-
believe
let's
Either way,
agree on
either
one
way,
thing.
that's
Did
an
he-
extreme
did he-
case.
Did he
No,
expose
let me
classified
answer.
documents or not?
he disclosed an illegal form of surveillance because you're not supposed to surveillance somebody unless a court order. He showed that millions of people's data were given under a government agency without the public consent or congressional consent. Or
That's true,
a
but
court
that's
order.
not the only
That
thing
is
he
illegal.
exposed, though.
Whoever I'm talking to, Nahum or
Bro, Nahum
whoever
is
I'm
not
talking
here,
to.
bro.
Yeah, there's
All right,
Nobody
I
in the
know
room is
Nahum.
called
Nahum
Nahum.
You're not
was a
speaking
guest
to
we had
Isaac,
on
by
one
the way.
time.
All right, I don't know whoever I'm talking to. Whoever I'm talking to, that's illegal. That's and also
Yes, that's true. That's illegal.
That's a human rights violation because that's the search of somebody that's taking away their self-determined rights over the U.S. Constitution and the United Nations self-determination for human civil liberties.
But if that's what we gotta do to prevent the next 9/11.
Listen. In international law and in U.S. law, that's both against somebody's civil liberty. So if you say that's democratic, then you just don't. I don't think your definition of democracy.
Okay, yeah. Now you're putting words in our mouth. Nobody said that.
First of all,
nobody said
what
that.
Nazi's saying.
I said if that's what we gotta do. Yo, listen, Christian. If that's what we gotta do to prevent the next 9/11, I'm personally with it.
Yeah,
he agrees with surveillance.
And
what we're trying to say.
You'll throw people's own rights so that you can feel safe. That's the definition of dictatorship.
We need to remove some people for the greater good.
How's that any different from communism? The thing that you're arguing for, right?
No, that's not even it. Christian, I think you have it misconstrued. When we say we're a fan of capitalism over communism, no, Christian, you got to let me finish.
Listen, Christian, Linda, listen.
That's so dishonest. No. What am I debating? Am I debating capitalism?
When we say we're a fan of capitalism over communism, we don't say 100% capitalism. There's areas of capitalism where we adjust it slightly to meet our needs. So we sign with capitalism.
To do that
it's you can if you want, you can call it hybrid capitalism because it's not a textbook definition of all the capitalism.
It is. That is social. Look up the definition.
But we don't follow the textbook definition of capitalism.
We're not extremists.
You don't know what you're talking about, dude.
No. Listen, look, we're not on the extreme spectrum of capitalism. Look. We're trying to say
you have to be the textbook. There's no society.
We are textbook. There's a spectrum, just how it is for conservatism, for liberalism. You're talking about the extreme spectrum of capitalism. Okay, what we're trying to basically say is, if you have problems with anything in government, any type of the surveillance with Edward Snowden, then you can take legal action, or you can have your voice in the government to have action. It's all available to us, is what we're trying to say. It might not be perfect, it might not be picturesque, but it's available. We have freedom of speech, and you're talking about extreme cases with whistleblowing.
Back to the Cuba example.
Talk one at a time, please.
There was for example, in Cuba, there was a big what's it called? There was a big debate in their parliament, which is called the Assembly for People's Power. They were debating over LGBT rights, and they had a long, lengthy, filibuster that lasted 10 years. In fact, even
how's that possible? I thought you have to be present in a filibuster.
No. I said in their Assembly for People's Power, the parliament. Other countries can have filibusters. They just have different names for it.
Okay.
Just like, for example, the UK has a parliament, we have a Congress. But anyways, back to what I was trying to say.
No, what I'm saying, I thought in a filibuster, everyone has to be present. You can't leave.
Yeah. No. In some countries, it's different. So bear with me. The point, what I'm trying to say is that they had a lengthy battle, and they were able to even have members of Cuban government who were convicted of doing, for example, hate crimes against gay people. They had a legislation that changed the policy. Or take Zimbabwe, another socialist country, where they legalized marijuana, and they had a 15-year, they had years and years of debate over it. And now they're the second country to legalize marijuana. In socialist countries, there are debates, there are disagreements. There are different kinds of communism. There's Trotskyism, Stalinism, Leninism, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, Hojism, anarcho-syndicalism. There's so many variations. What I feel like your definition of communism is literally like the Soviet Union. There's so many variations, and those variations have to debate each other in what we call the dictatorship of the proletariat, where workers, the proletariat, run the means of production. Yes, to some degree, it's not democratic. If you're a rich landowner, yes, your land is going to get seized.
Absolutely, and
that's the end of it. Yeah.
Besides the different variations of communism.
No. Don't cut me off. Compared to capitalist countries where every major capitalist country has colonized another group of people, take Portugal. Majority of their colonies in Mozambique and Angola, they had them for colonies.
You're not going to take away imperialism just because you're in a communist society.
Imperialism was created in capitalism, dude. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but you see Russia trying to get what's the country called?
What?
You mean Crimea
No,
after they had a democratic
Ukraine?
referendum?
No,
You
look,
mean Crimea?
just because you're in a communist society doesn't mean that there's going to be no imperialism. Everyone is going to try to take.
Imperialism. How come Africa, when they fought for independence,
That's not the solution to imperialism.
The biggest war against imperialism was the decolonization of Africa and Asia during the 1960s through 80s. Like, what are you talking about?
No, but I'm saying because communism isn't the
all right,
solution to imperialism.
communism?
Imperialism is always going to exist.
Okay, but
It's a human nature.
It's human nature.
The largest enslavement of human beings in human history. The enslaving of Africans were the largest.
You keep mentioning that because we're a communist society. We're imperialists.
Stop making a straw man out of me every time I mention imperialism, because you know it's the weak point of your argument.
How's that the weak point? You're making the argument because
Christian,
U.S.
this isn't like a competition or like a battle. Like, we're just having a conversation here. So like,
yeah, but that's
so
just it's not fair.
nobody's like trying to attack you with like calling everything you say a straw man argument. We're just it's just a conversation.
I know. I get a little heated. All right, it's all right. But basically, what I was trying to say is that let me tell you all right. When you think of rich capitalist country, name like 10 rich capitalist countries right now. Just to give an example.
United States, United Kingdom,
France, Belgium.
Shoot, what's that?
Okay, keep going.
Like super high education.
Keep going.
Iceland, Ireland, they don't have democracy. I think they're social, something like that. They're
democracy.
They're not. Yeah.
They're run by Sinn Féin.
So what point are you trying to make? What point are you trying to make?
Canada.
All right, you didn't. You're finished your argument. I mean, what I asked you wouldn't exactly finish. What you were going to say is like UK, England, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, all these Western European countries. Also, tell me, the largest colonial empires were these exact countries. So tell me with a straight face that all these great social programs, which were paid through imperialism, by the way,
okay.
How did they pay for through imperialism? Why is communism harder to build than capitalism?
Say that one more time. I didn't catch that.
All these countries, for example, I respect the English, the British, French, and so on. I think they have great healthcare programs. I actually respect social democracy. I hope it didn't seem like I hated it, but I'm all right with it. I just disagree with it morally. But what I was trying to say is social democracy and capitalism have historically benefited from colonialism, imperialism. For example, if the free world, i.e. United States and France, respected human rights, how come it took NATO, which is supposed to protect the world from communism, why did it take them 500 years to embrace the fact that people in Africa and Asia have a right to self-determination?
Look,
like your argument is so weak.
Let's try to answer your first question.
How come, for example, it took the United States 70 years to see apartheid as a bad thing, but it took the USSR 2 years. Like literally the day it was founded, they disrecognized.
No, there's no argument with that. With our current,
what I'm saying
our current society, we're trying to answer some of your questions.
But to answer your question, when you talk about freedom, self-determination is a human right, and that's in the UN Human Rights Charter. The only country to help Africa leave from colonialism was the USSR, the Eastern Bloc, which is like Eastern Europe basically when it was communist in East Germany, and Cuba. So in that case, yes, that is their greatest contribution to human rights. Because of them, Africa is free from colonialism. Asia is free from colonialism. That is a big human right. Compared to colonial empires like England and France, did you know that Lord Mountbatten in England, who was the cousin-in-law to Queen Elizabeth, he said that if it was possible, we could keep India as a colony until 1968. But because of him being assassinated, and many of his members being assassinated by the Quit India movement, India is a free country. So when you look at all these great struggles for independence, majority of them are against capitalist countries. You have to accept that at one point or another. Well, you can't deny that England and France they're not, even to this day, incredibly rich because of colonialism, that they're rich, the 1% in all those countries didn't benefit. Right. Yeah, so your argument
let me try to say something.
communism not democratic.
Go ahead,
The
Isaac.
fact that
Look,
they
look.
can own the fact that they
first,
can own the means of production.
Christian, let Isaac speak for a second.
To answer some of your points, right? You mentioned how U.S. was slow to be against
No, the
apartheid.
U.S. 77.
Let him answer. Let him answer.
Our
Okay.
current democratic system, as opposed to a communist system, is just naturally slower. We know that it takes a lot. It takes longer when you need more and more people to agree on something, as opposed to a communist system. That's one of the reasons why China's GDP is doing so
that's why
well.
China is moving fast right now.
And a lot of the countries
Not
that you
really.
named, a lot of the capitalist countries that we named, excuse me, these are big countries, have high GDPs. They're just we named some superpowers. So when you have these massive countries, that we listed, that you asked us to list, 10
capitalist countries.
Democratic countries.
Yeah.
Capitalist.
So these big countries, obviously, we know that everybody is just imperialism exists. It's in a lot of countries, almost all. Everyone has this imperialistic nature. When you mix that with now a superpower, obviously you can get more. Of course, UK had they colonialized a massive amounts of land because they were a huge superpower. They had the power to do so.
Half
right?
of the world.
Okay.
Now,
I
when you look at
respect your-
communist countries like China, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Cuba, how can you compare those two countries, like the countries that we
All right.
listed?
Can I answer that?
Okay.
Can I answer
Let him
that?
finish.
No.
All right. Sorry
Go ahead and
about
answer.
that.
No, go ahead and answer.
No, I want you to finish.
No, I
so
finished.
that,
That was my point.
Oh.
That was pretty much my point.
Okay, so now I'm gonna answer that with just two answers actually. One of the problems is that one of the things you said, that's not real capitalism, as you said, imperialism. I guess you believe that imperialism is not real capitalism, correct?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you'll get imperialism, whether you're communist society or a capitalist
Okay.
society.
It's part
Okay.
of human
How come-
nature, is what he's
how
saying. I
come-
think.
Okay, how come during the Cold War? So remember when I mentioned Mobutu Sese Seko
No,
earlier?
refresh.
All right, Mobutu's the dictator in Congo that I told you about that killed 15, 14 million people.
Okay.
Okay, that was during the Cold War. What dictator that the Soviet Union supported in Africa, let's give an experiment in Africa that killed that equal amount of people. Then you can say that there's imperialism on both sides.
We can say
If you can't name a
Mengistu.
dictatorship, if you can't name a dictatorship in the communist sphere of influence that committed that equal amount of murder, then your argument falls on its face. because-
Yeah, we can say
It's just-
Mengistu.
Huh? Mengistu killed 15 million people?
I don't know
if
the
you-
numbers,
What are you-
but
what are you
we
trying to
killed
say?
Go to the red
people.
Hold on,
Dude,
I'm a bit
Go to
lost
the
right
red-
now. Try to
Dude,
rephrase your question.
No, we're not lost. I just made a good point. and
No,
wanted you-
we're lost.
No,
We're not following.
We're not
could you
following
rephrase that
what
one more time?
question you're trying to ask. What question?
What I'm saying is compared to Mobutu, which the U.S. supported, who took $20 billion of his people's money and killed close to 14 to 15 million people.
Okay.
What country in Africa, for example, let's just get regional, in Africa, killed that exact number of people or created that exact
Mengistu, the
level
ruler of Ethiopia in the 70s.
You mean the-
In the
oh,
80s.
What are you trying to? What's the point you're trying to make here?
I'm saying that let's say even hypothetically your argument that imperialism exists in both systems.
Yeah.
I would like to argue that Mobutu is my example that, and please look him up while you're talking to me just for more context.
He's the guy who killed. Who's the dictator in the Congo, right?
Yeah, he killed Lumumba.
Yeah. Okay.
He's
I
the
know a little
president.
about him.
Basically, let me put it this way: Congo was named Zaire, so that'll make it faster for you to look him up.
Okay.
And basically, there's
Continue.
when you talk about Mengistu, I'm answering two things at once. That really annoys me.
Okay. Then answer
Let me
one thing. Answer
let
the
me
fact
answer
that,
Isaac-
when
let me
he
answer
said,
Isaac-
answer the
stop,
Isaac
just
part
stop.
where he said, imperialism
let me
exists
talk.
in all systems. Answer that.
Seyoum, let me talk. I'll answer Isaac and I'll answer the other guy after that. 'Cause, the other dude he asked right after Isaac. To answer Isaac's point, when you look at Africa, for example, you said also look at countries like Laos, North Korea, and China and Vietnam, correct? And how I would make that argument, correct?
No. I just said when you compare those
You
countries
compare
to
them
the
to those
communist countries
why
that
would
we
you make
named.
that argument?
No, I said when you compare those countries to the countries that capitalist countries that we named, we made the point that these were superpowers, and that because they had so much, such a strong force, of course they're gonna colonize more land.
Okay.
Like with the UK.
All right. But
I'm confused on like what you guys are even talking about at this point.
The main point that we're trying to make is that
you just pointed out like 4 communist countries as an example of compared to these rich capitalist like democratic countries.
What's the topic of discussion right now? Like I thought the topic discussion was
topic of discussion.
But like didn't you say that imperialism exists in all systems like communism, capitalism?
Yes.
And he's trying to say that's not the case, right?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that part? Because I don't know why we're like referencing like 20 countries.
Literally, let me talk like for 2 seconds. What I'm saying is compared to like dictators like Rootin in the Congo, and just to name another one, Suharto in Indonesia killed like 4.5 million of his own people and killed half the population of East Timor, an island country right next to Indonesia. Compared to those dictators, the USSR and other countries like China. Remember, after Stalin died, after Mao Zedong died, China became a liberal capitalist country, and it became the iPhone sweatshop that it is today. But back to what you were saying, like China, Vietnam, Laos, and so on. Vietnam had to fight a colonial war with the French and was invaded by the United States. And then it had to develop its economy for decades and decades and decades, and it had CIA harassment for another 20 years.
Okay.
Until the Normalization Act with Vietnam under the Bill Clinton administration in 1994. Laos still experiences a CIA-backed insurgency by the Hmong ethnic group. And to name North Korea lost 2.5 million people when Curtis LeMay, who was the leader of
how does this tie into the point?
The Air Force bombed Pyongyang for like 9 months and killed 2 million people. And they had to restructure their economy. They lost 90% of their infrastructure.
What does that have to do with imperialism, though?
Yeah, you got to get to the...
What I'm saying is that these capitalist countries have the privilege of having stability through imperialism. And these communist countries, they have to resist imperialism every single day, to the point that in some ways they end up making mistakes of becoming authoritarian. That's my argument. That in the resistance of imperialism, they make drastic mistakes. I'm not denying that there's authoritarianism and communism. Of course there is.
Yeah, but they themselves have been imperialistic as well.
The reason that caused authoritarianism and communism is different than capitalism. Capitalism has historically been authoritarian. America, England, France, Germany, Belgium, all these other countries, they were always enslaving people. They were always taking advantage of other people. The first thing the Soviet Union did when it was created, it destroyed the serf system and gave Georgians, Kazakhstanis, Ukrainians universal rights to Russians. The United States.
That's why we have a democratic society, to help marginalized group or people that feel oppressed.
We have a institutionally racist system that intentionally targets black people.
Absolutely.
Yes,
but there has been things that
it's so bad that literally 22% of the African American community cannot vote in elections because they have a prior conviction.
Absolutely.
So what they do is they illegally and disproportionately target black people and poor people so that they can take away their democratic rights. That's my argument.
Absolutely.
And that is they take away your freedom. Because if I can't vote because I was convicted of a bullshit crime, like I had 1 dime of marijuana in like the 80s and now I can't vote for the rest of my life.
You're right about that, but at the same time there has been change taking place.
It's not necessarily that democratic, because there's countries like Portugal that have left their colonial legacy and they've legalized all drugs. I would argue that there's other countries more democratic than the United States.
No, you're right, but
there's no occupation right now that killed more innocent people in the 20th century than the U.S. occupation of Iraq. So when you talk about the biggest occupations, the biggest dictatorships in Africa, they're all supported and done and paid off by the United States. And that's my argument to you, and you seem to be like completely obfuscate when I say that.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But we not. Our point here is that.
And when you look at, for example, China, why didn't you point out that?
Go ahead, Nati. Christian, you gotta let other people speak on the.
All right, wait 1 second.
Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. America been overthrowing governments since the start of it. But our point here is that democracy works. It's still happening.
We're not disagreeing with that at all.
Exactly, but we're saying is the system that is better than what you're believing. democracy is better than what China's doing, what Cuba is doing. That's what we argument. We're not here to justify what America been doing this whole the past 300 years.
And what we're doing is we're a capitalist society that's also democratic.
Exactly.
And it's not
we're
just
talking about the system, not what America's done.
Yeah, because you keep mentioning America's involvement in other governments. You're mentioning
imperialism, and you're not accepting that.
No, you're mentioning America's involvements in other countries. You're mentioning institutionalized racism in America. Look,
that exists. You're right.
That 100% exists. But there has been movements and things that H&M released a shirt that said "coolest monkey in the yard." You seen what happened with that? People started pulling partnerships.
You know why they did that?
Their stock.
You know why they did that?
I don't know why they did that, but that doesn't matter, because for the argument that we're making right now, we're saying that everybody has a voice in our current system. Social media has and the internet itself has given a voice to marginalized groups and allowed us to keep these companies and corporations liable for the actions that they do and for wrongs that have been done.
Exactly.
And we are able to do that because we live in a society that allows freedom of speech. In China, they have limited social media. They have things that has to be censored.
If the H&M thing happened in China, you think H&M will lose all that stock?
Absolutely not.
Exactly, because the government.
You notice how many companies in China have been caught trying to copy like U.S.-made games and whatnot, like for example, Team Fortress 2, Overwatch, and
Michael
so on.
Jordan.
And China was like, "We'll just sell Overwatch to the people." Like, you notice that those video games were made and subsidized by the Chinese government. So, in a way, the first people to call it out were Chinese gamers. So the argument that you're saying that people can criticize China, you know how many like reshuffles of the Chinese Communist Party there have been since the death of Mao Zedong? There's been 7. There's been literal coups. There was a military coup just now, recently.
That's just what you just said.
There is no competition.
We don't need a coup. And a democracy
amongst ideologies. Like I said, like you said, Bernie Sanders is a radical. He had to compete democratically with other people. That exists in communism.
His
that absolutely exists in communism.
Our main argument to bring it all back is that America, being a capitalist democratic society, has nothing to do with capitalism. It has to do with capitalism. This entire argument was about capitalism in our democratic society. The way America is structured is capitalism. That's embedded into what America is, right? So we're arguing that with our current system, our capitalistic democratic system is the best, is one of the best. We're not saying it's perfect, but we're saying it's an amazing system.
The best and perfect are literally like synonyms of one another.
No,
so
it's not. It's the best thing that we. It's what we prefer because
it's not perfect.
It's and you can't just
you can't have anything perfect.
Yeah, it's not gonna satisfy every. It's not gonna satify every genre perfectly. That system doesn't exist.
So,
but we believe that capitalism has like it gives the best percentage. I don't even know the best
outcome for the people. So we're worrying about the greater goods.
Like you need competition,
and not just that.
I want to
like
flex with the
there's different genres that it affects, and you can't just point to one genre and say, well, it does bad right here, while capitalism does better over here.
I just told you earlier that there's different variations of communism.
We realize that.
In fact, you might even find, if I'm not, maybe the next communist you might end up debating. You know what they'll say when you mention China? They'll just say that's not real communism. And it becomes, you know what that fallacy is called in debating? It's called the no true Scotsman. It's when you imply that something is not a true blank, that then you don't have to defend it or explain it. I mention imperialism, all these major imperialist powers have benefited from imperialism.
You've done the same thing when you mentioned capitalism, though. You've done the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think Christian, before you say that, I think we're kind of running in circles. We've been talking for about a whole hour. No, Christian. Let me say this real quick. Let me take the floor for a second. I feel like we've been talking for an hour, and I feel like we haven't moved.
We gotta wrap it
one
up.
No. Christian, let me say this real quick, please. Let's just start off by giving basic one sentence, maybe 2 sentence definitions for the 3 different kinds of economies: capitalism, socialism, and communism, right? and those three all have their pros and their cons. And let's not even call it pros and cons. There's things that those three do differently than one another. When the United States, we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Nothing is perfect.
Okay, let's just create some common ground. Capitalism, there are things that it affords to the United States that we wouldn't be able to have if we were running under a communism system.
No. Okay.
Would you agree with that?
I'll just let you, I'm not even going to challenge you.
No. But would you agree with that? Yes or no?
If you disagree, go ahead and vocalize your opinion.
If you look at North Korea, can I answer that, or are one of y'all going to interrupt me like that?
No, but just a quick answer. Do you think there are rights and privileges?
In North Korea, they have 3 literal parties in their parliament, and they challenge one another. You notice in North Korea, Kim Jong-un lost 50 seats in his parliament because of his almost war path that he has with Trump. You know that, right? The North Korean parliament forced him to make a treaty with South Korea.
I absolutely disagree with that.
No, he keeps making that point.
Party and there's the Social Democratic Party in North Korea.
Let's say this.
So,
I think you're mishearing this.
Hold on. We have to have common ground because I feel like everybody has different definitions of what we're talking about.
Look, you keep mentioning this.
You just said you can challenge somebody in the system, and I just told you that there are people in North Korea that challenge Kim.
Okay, hear me out.
That's why not saying
family. We're not saying any form of authenticity. You keep saying, I take every point that you say with authenticity.
Let me say this. You keep saying that because we mentioned China that
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Right?
Because we mentioned China that you think the totality of our argument or our viewpoint on communism is the way China. Their variation of communism. We recognize that there are variations of communism. We realize that. We're not saying that just because China.
I just gave you an example.
You just gave us an argument how China isn't really communist. Yes, a communist society.
I just made an example with North Korea, and you brushed it off. And the same one was about LGBT rights in Cuba. You just brushed
because
it
it boiled down to the same point of what you're trying to say.
We keep extending to different countries, and I feel like we're
because those are the countries where communism exists today, right now.
But that's not the question at hand. No, that's not the question. The question at hand.
I don't want to.
No.
I don't want to debate you theoretically. I want to debate you in real world examples because that's how I debate people. Or that's how I have discussions with people.
But we have to create common ground so we understand. Because my definition of imperialism, capitalism, socialism, and communism may be different from how you're defining it. So right now, just for the conversation to keep continuing, I just want to lay some common ground so I know and you know what our definition for those words are. So that's why I asked you. Everybody agreed that there's 3 different kinds of economy: socialism, communism, and capitalism. And there are rights that are afforded to you in a capitalist system that would not be afforded to you in a communist system, and vice versa. Would you agree with that?
I mean, you're making...
would you agree with that?
He said North Korea. He made the argument with North Korea.
Okay, let me hear him say that real quick. But would you agree with that?
We recognize that there's variations.
Let me finish.
But make it short because I feel like you keep referencing many countries.
Oh my God, let me talk. That economy affects society. There's capitalism, there's socialism, and then there's communism. Fine. But when you talk about, you said that there's imperialism in every system, I've told you...
No, we're not talking about imperialism.
Let me talk.
I've told you the largest colonial empires, i.e. colonialism is imperialism, are in capitalist countries. So, by default, capitalist countries have the big what's it called? They have the bigger legacy of imperialism.
Okay.
The only argument you could possibly make about communist imperialism is probably Eastern Europe and East Germany. That's it. That's the only quote unquote you can even remotely make as colonies for communism.
Okay, well to wrap up,
you have all
we gotta wrap up.
Wait.
Half a millennia.
Christian.
That's just it's not even in the same ballpark, my guy.
Okay. Well, we gotta wrap it up real quick. So let's give our final thoughts.
Yeah, let's just give the final thoughts because I just want a basic I feel like we literally walked around.
No, there can't be a basic definition because there are variations of each one. There's variations of communism, like he mentioned. We mentioned that we're trying to find. It seemed like the argument that we're making, that especially what you just said recently, was about imperialism.
Off with Mengistu, but we never finished that. I mean, that would be an easy.
Yeah, we got to save that because we kind of hit our market.
You can come back to the podcast. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a one-time thing.
Yeah, you can definitely come back. Of course.
How much time do we have left?
We have a couple minutes, so we're just gonna give our we're already running.
Why don't we talk something else?
We're wrapping up right now because we're already like past an hour already, so we're about to wrap it up.
Finals week too.
Oh, but like this didn't make you think like I dislike you guys?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not, man. It was amazing. It was just a good argument. That's kind of what happens with good arguments is there's emotion. There's always emotion.
Okay. So how about like you tell me what you were trying to say and like what I didn't understand, and I'll really quick tell you what I was trying to say.
Just to wrap it up. Okay.
Just to wrap it up. Okay. Well, we just try to say that, you know, we recognize that there's variations of communism, and you mentioned that you've seen a lot of communism primarily with the capitalist society, imperialism with the capitalist society, and we mentioned that the capitalist societies that we just named, the capitalist countries that we name, like US, UK, because they're such large powers, they tend to, you know, colonize more land. And that was the argument we're saying. We're saying that imperialism exists amongst whether you're a capitalist society or your communist society. Although there might be more imperialism in a capitalist society, we still recognize that exists. And you know, a capitalist society matched with a democratic society allows the people to hold government accountable for wrongdoings, like them trying to colonize land that they shouldn't be colonizing. So that's all we were trying to say, and hopefully we got our point across, and we definitely heard what you had to say. So anything else you want to touch on?
By the way, while we're on the podcast, what's his name? Kanye West just dropped a track called "Ye versus the People." So everybody, the internet is going crazy about it.
We about to check that out
I don't
right
know,
now.
This is
and
just like
Christian, anything you want to shout out?
You want me to say something?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So about the Kanye thing, because that's what I think. Either Kanye or this one of those things caused this big discussion. Basically, about Kanye is he's just a big rich capitalist who made money off of sweatshops. That is, in my personal opinion, where capitalism originated at. You may have some social programs that regulate it, but that's what I feel like pure capitalism is. Without regulation on its own legs, like its own evolution leads to that.
Absolutely.
And to see that rich liberal capitalist news sites and other rich capitalists like 50 Cent and Dr. Dre getting upset about that when their stuff are made of sweatshop, it's like watching Genghis Khan, Hitler, and Ted Bundy get into a tiffy with one another when they're all murderers. Like, it doesn't even matter to me. That's how I see it as a communist. I don't even care.
Yeah.
It's all identity.
It's called capitalist society.
Yeah, that is pure capitalism. Thank you that you agree on that. Pure capitalism with no regulation is literally rich people versus poor people.
Oh yeah.
You work in my factory, and I can say whatever. You can't unionize.
That's why the proletariat will overthrow the.
Yeah, and it was like, so I remember reading some weird statistic thing about I forgot completely, but like if everybody was equal and it was a capitalist system, 10% of the population, the top 10% of the population would have like 90% of the wealth.
No, that's what we have now.
No, but that would have 90%
like
of the
in
wealth.
a normal, like even like in the wild, like in the wild where it's like predator versus prey, like in a lion system and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but that's why
something like that.
That's why the masses will overthrow. Saying.
Wait, why don't we have a discussion about marijuana? Because that was something I was hearing you and Seyoum have an argument about, and I wanted to be there so badly about the marijuana.
We can do that another time.
We got it. Yeah, we're running
this week's final, so everybody's got to get out. But anything you want to shout out? Your IG, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
I don't use any social media. So.
But you said you're trying to create a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to shout that out?
It's called Rooting for Lenin, and it's just like it has like I guess like a stormtrooper as the profile.
Okay, it'll all be in the description. Just shoot me a text at that, and
it's in the comment section. Yeah. It's in the comment section of one of the videos. Like
it's going to be in the description of this video. Thank you for being on the podcast, Christian.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it was amazing. We did a good job.
That's another podcast, R&R number 9, right?
It's great to have a discussion with you guys and see your viewpoints and like have a healthy discussion.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Right,
this was R&R podcast number 9. Thank you for listening.
Make sure you guys can follow us on R&R on SoundCloud as well as any other platform. Make sure you guys stay tuned with me on youtube.com/AquaBlack. That's youtube.com/AquaBlack. And follow me on Instagram, MJ_.
All in the description.
You guys have an amazing day.